Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopikina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News Review, where we rate articles essential, important, and optional, helping you navigate through a lot of news that happens in AI every day and find the most important ones and most impactful ones. Today, I have Ankaj in live view for the first time. Paul Baya, Tim Andrews, Adam Rappaport, and John Sverkla. So today, the articles are listed on our gaiinsights.com/articles. Please follow along and tell us what you think, whether you agree or disagree with our ratings and thoughts. Okay, we're ready for the first article. Ankash, please.
Sure, thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Microsoft, and they have introduced a Copilot mode in Edge.
Right. So, Tim, this is Microsoft getting into the web wars and actually automating a whole bunch of stuff. What did you think about this one?
Well, it looks great. And this is, I think, the next wave of activity. One of the big next waves of activity is taking over the browser, because the browser, if you think about it, went from viewing pages to the search engine, just became the search engine and the way to get to viewing. And now we've all talked about the search engine changing to the answer engine. And so this is a major hyperscaler saying we're going for it. Google has sort of already done some things in this area, by introducing their AI tools. This is trying to make a more integrated version. Looks great. I'm always the scientific skeptic when it comes to Microsoft execution and performance on their tools, because they always look great and they're usually mediocre. So we'll see. I would give this an important, because it's Microsoft, because it's in the browser wars. I would definitely give this an important. I think you should know about it. But I would be very skeptical as to how good it's actually going to be until there's been some real experience by a fair number of people.
Okay. Well, Adam, you probably tried it. What did you think?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to have a quick, deeper dive. I mean, and you're right, Tim. That's exactly what they're going after. Literally, at the beginning of that video, it says it's time to question your browser, which is, I think, very clever of them. And they've been working towards this for a while, but it's basically everything up through OpenAI's agent. All for free for everyone, just for using their browser, which is a pretty big deal. I'd probably consider it essential news. So there's like the web search and chat with the Copilot. There's the quick answers to the everyday questions. They make it really simple for everyone to get around all of those capabilities. And it's like, wait, am I using 4.0? Am I using 0.3? Do I use research mode? And it's just the search and chat, the quick answers, think deeper, which is like the reasoning, like the 0.3, and then action, which is basically like OpenAI's agent. I took it for a little spin. I said I need flights from Melbourne to San Francisco round trip on these dates, and it was able to go out to Skyscanner and perform the query. It actually stopped at one point and was like, I was having trouble converting to your currency. I'm not sure what currency to use. And I told it use AUD, and it went back in and it finished it all. And it said, I found you the flights. And it on the screen at any point, you can say take control, and it'll let you control the browser where you're watching it navigate. So this is computer use agent for everyone. It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and the power will come from the integration with internal documents in a secure way. That's where the power will come from. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, I was going to give it an important. I could be convinced of essential, because Microsoft's got about 15% market share on the browsers with Edge. So it's a significant minority, but a minority. I do want to go back to something Tim said, which is he is the skeptical scientist. I think sometimes you're just the irascible skeptic. It's not always a scientific.
John.
I'll give you that. Most of the time it's scientific, but anyway, yeah, I mean, look, I think it's amazing just how that agentic behavior is happening all over the place, but especially actively at the browser level. So, data provider, important.
It sounds important, big important. Ankash, where you are with this?
Uh, Definitely on important, Luda. I think we are seeing a lot of the browsers, right? So Dia, Perplexity, then now Microsoft. I think what makes this better for Microsoft is the current penetration that they have with Edge browser in every sort of multinational company, and using it for not just personal purposes but professional purposes. I think will give it a edge compared to Perplexity or other browsers that are out there. So definitely
Yeah.
important development.
Okay. Going important, Paul, okay? Or you
Yeah.
want to make a case for essential?
No. Well, almost there. I mean, I think the AI leaders, we're going through a profound change of how all knowledge workers interface with their knowledge, with their data, with their processes and apps. And that's browser to every interface of every ISV to mode. And this is changing very quickly. And the whole governance issue across all that here. So definitely.
Yeah. And Microsoft gives the user security of their data and the like, and that's important. Okay, important it is. Let's proceed. Ankash, please. Next article.
Okay, the next one is about GLM 4.5, which has reasoning, coding, and agentic abilities, and comes from Z.ai, which is a Chinese startup.
Yes. John, what did you think about this? We have now Chinese models almost like every day with reported performance and very detailed across the various metrics in thinking, coding, reasoning, all of those. And they are quite good. Now, this is open weights, open everything, no licensing. You take it, you modify it, you can use it on your own hosting services or whatever internally. What did you think, John?
This isn't open data, right? This is open. What? It is open data.
Yeah.
You can get the data. You can get the training data as well.
I don't know what their data. It's open weights.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I don't think you get.
At least they didn't mention the training data, just the weights.
Yeah, I think of truly open as training data and training method. Like then you're open, right? So it's partially open. I was going to give this important. I do think it's ironic that the Communist Party of China is using open source. And when you think about open source is probably the best that communism has brought to us, because open source is fundamentally communistic. It's from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs, as Marx, talked about, and he didn't invent that. A French social philosopher did. But anyway, I think it's important for leaders to pay attention to this. This is highly, it's got good performance. I hate the word performant. Anyway, it's highly performant, but I don't think it's essential. I think this is brilliant military industrial policy on the part of the Chinese, and competitive strategy by these different companies, to do this. But I think for our AI leader, this is optional to important. I'd land on important.
I see. Where were you, Tim, on this one?
Yep, I agree. I think it's important that the Chinese onslaught continues, and unfortunately, I think most of the U.S. policy folks have their head in the sand about this stuff, comparatively speaking. So we'll see. But this is yet another Chinese model. The interesting thing is they've got very talented work going on. It certainly appears, because these folks didn't do anything incredibly revolutionary, but they did a whole bunch of things simultaneously to improve performance, and they got it. At least according to these benchmarks. So that's pretty impressive. So these are now really biting at the heels of Anthropic and OpenAI. And, people will resist, and we can pass laws that say you can't use Chinese tools in your American software. But at some point, it's just going to become impossible to prevent, in my opinion. It's just like, if you can buy the steel for 5 cents over there and $5 over here, eventually the 5 cents is going to win. It's just hard to win that battle over time.
Yeah. So, Ankash, you're right on the chart here to point out that the model that we reviewed yesterday, the Gwen Thinking 2507, is the same level of parameters, but pretty much the performance is way lower. So it's like every day there's a change. But I don't know how many enterprises will adopt this. Because it's Chinese, because it's harder to navigate. What do you think, Paul?
Well, they're certainly adopting DeepSeek and the hyperscalers here. I mean, I think for me, the bigger one is, I mean, we talked to a lot of Silicon Valley companies, and they do not lack of confidence. But let's be really clear, the open source community in China is kicking Silicon Valley's ass right and left. And I think if you're one of the investors there, you really got to see that this trend, I don't think, is going to change. And you've got to get these venture-backed things also moving into non-intelligence application areas, because it's breathtaking what's happening here. Look, this is July, and DeepSeek came out 7 months ago in December. So in the last 7 months, look at the variety, the quality, the intensity coming out of the open source model here, and
they're giving it away. Exactly.
They're just blowing it away, and all I hear is arrogance and confidence from the Valley folks. So definitely, it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning in my mind.
Yeah.
What is your rating, Paul?
Important.
Important.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, can I just point out, like, one B-1 bomber costs about $2 billion. I mean, if we're interested in protecting the country, investing $2 billion in American open source would be a much better yield.
Yeah, you won't get an argument from me. Lots more.
It takes leadership.
We're not there. We're going the other way, I think.
No, there's no red hat. We don't have a U.S. red hat around this.
Well, yeah, it's just the whole. Anyway, it's just.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of disappointment here, but let's proceed. Ankash, important? Okay with important?
Yes, Luda. And I think there seemed to be a flywheel in action where these new set of models are building on, let's say, DeepSeek, Quinn, and other set of models. So learning from the algorithmic innovations that these guys did earlier, and now coming up with better and better set of models.
Yeah, they're really on steroids, because and each one has innovations like this one with the reinforcement learning and and memory and optimization. So they had a couple that are very new innovations, but important it is. Okay, let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from Anthropic and talks about how Anthropic's teams use Claude Code.
A simple but quite a broad article, essentially best practices internally at Anthropic. What did you think about this, Adam?
So, in summary, it's exactly what it says, right? It's how Anthropic, the teams at Anthropic actually use their own product, the Claude Code, and it's from the lawyers to the marketers to the data scientists, and it's quite an interesting read. I think I'd probably flag it as an important, just so it doesn't get missed on the radar. But as we've done here, not so much the news itself, but the report is where it actually gets really down detailed into, for every one of these different teams, like 3, 4, 5 specific use cases of ways that Claude Code was applied. So it's a really great kind of mind opener about the expansive capabilities of the tool. Not an essential read, but I'd consider it important.
Why wouldn't you suggest it as essential read? Coding is one of the top use cases in general. Every company uses it to some extent. So this is a pretty serious cross-function.
In some ways, I get that it's the things they've done with it, but you could almost have an AI just come up with a list of use cases, and it would probably not look dissimilar from this. There isn't a lot of information about what you can do, and if you went and said, "Hey, how can I use Claude Code for the lawyers in my company?" you'd probably get a lot of similar information. It's great that it's real world Anthropic's actual own reflection, but so they're basically saying, look at all the ways we've used our own product, and it's like, okay, great, yeah, that's great. There's lots of ways you can use your product,
okay.
But
all right,
any specific use case with the benefits and the description of the architecture, but it's a little high level overall for just sort of having a touch on all of these different.
Fair enough. Ankash, important. Where are you?
on important only, Luda, I think it lacks the details in terms of how they have done it. So highlights what they have done, but the how part is missing. But provides good examples on anybody who wants to experiment.
Okay, going important.
Yep.
John, Tim, Paul.
Yeah, I think this thing.
I'm right there.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I think this.
I'm right there with important.
Okay. Well,
What's interesting is this distinction between technical work and regular work is starting to blur, and I agree with that. And a friend of Tim's and mine, Alan Kay, the guy who invented the Dynabook and object-oriented programming and all that other stuff, he really believed that you could radically change the productivity of everything, including organizations, if people would actually learn how to code and use these tools. And now we finally kind of got something that's easy enough that the majority of people may, or at least a significant minority of people will do it. And I think Alan's right. Anyway, it's going to be, I think we're going into a whole nother productivity realm.
yeah. And
I think this
some,
is. I think this
companies,
is.
I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
I think this is actually pretty good. It is, as has been said, a little bit light on the detail, but they give examples of the time saved. They do a broad set of use cases. This is an important company that's moving fast and making use of their own tools. And so it's a good overview. I think it's good to read, even if, again, I'm always thinking we overestimate how much people are familiar with these kinds of stories. And so a little reinforcement, particularly since they do have some good, at least high level indications of, we save 50% here and 70% there. I think it's a good read.
Yeah, no, that's why I was suggesting essential, because it kind of, they also, as they were doing this, they discovered some new ways that people were using, surprising ways. And that's, I thought, was useful. But yeah, I'm okay with important. Paul, important?
Yes.
Good. Important it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from machine learning at Apple and talks about fast VLM, efficient vision encoding for vision language models.
Yes, so this is trying to solve for efficiency and latency, and getting there. Well, there's a deeper paper underneath this summary. What did you think about this, Tim?
I gave this an important. It's a little technical, and you could argue that it's not really going to affect anything because it's research. So I'm sort of I can make the case on both sides, but the reason I gave it important is, first of all, Apple does great research. I think in spite of their problems with implementation, their research has been pretty darn good. And this is another example similar to what we saw with Z.AI, the Chinese company we talked about earlier, where they've done a whole series of things that have really improved the performance of a phone-based reasoner. And that, to me, visual reasoner, and that to me is why it's important, because if your phone suddenly becomes a pretty good visual reasoner, they're already okay. Some of the things you can already do on phones are remarkable, where you can just sort of point it at something and say, "What's this?" and get a reasonable answer. If you told somebody that 5 years ago, they would have thought you had 3 heads, right? And if you can get to the point where it's even better than that, where it's really deeply reasoning about visual scenes on your phone without any need to connect to some big GPU farm, that is a game changer, not just for phones, but for all sorts of, again, the terrible naming of the tech world, the IoTs, the Internet of Things. So any kind of device that has a visual field, and that's going to be hugely important. So yeah. I think it's worth saying this is important.
Yeah, this is a surprising rating from Tim on the research article. What did you think about this, Adam?
I'm very surprised. I'm pulling myself off the floor. This is a research paper and a company that's.
I told you I was on the border, but the fact that it's a device held thing and the performance they got is, could be a watershed. You never know the watersheds till afterwards.
I was trying to think of how Paul would make the analogy, like you're talking about putting some copper plating on the spark plugs to get them a little higher temperature, and
that's right.
The person driving the car is trying to figure out where the indicators are. Like,
okay, so
don't bother him with this. This is under the hood, and as important as it might be, to our future, it's super interesting.
Maybe my geekiness took over me. Yeah.
Okay, so Adam, you were optional, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ankash, where were you?
You made a great case, though,
Uh,
Tim. Like I was on the fence after listening to you. I'll be honest.
Oh, kind. Stick to your guns, Adam. Audience wants food
Ankash,
choice.
what did you think?
Optional for me, Luda.
Uh-huh. Okay, John.
Optional.
Optional. So, Paul, you were optional as well. Tim, you were overruled. Optional it is. Let's proceed. Ankash.
Okay. The next one comes from Ethan Mollick, where he talks about the bitter lesson versus the garbage can.
Yeah, could you scroll to the map? Yeah. So I know that a little bit higher, right? That's map. I was doing process reengineering across GE units in 90s, I think it was, right? And so I've created some of these maps and they are really discouraging. So much messiness, and we were on the chore of straightening them out. So here's the argument about how you can just leave it in the dust and give computing power to AI, and it will solve the problem for the output. Whatever you want, it will create. What did you think about this, Adam?
I was actually on the fence between important and optional. I think it's a little superficial. There's some deeper considerations. As I think John understands better than I do in terms of the business drivers behind what happens sometimes within organizations. But so the idea is the garbage can is the messy, chaotic organization, and the bitter lesson is the truth we keep bumping into, which is that AI through brute force ultimately can find a way, even if it isn't our way, that ends up being better than our way, and that at a certain point we don't necessarily have to figure out what all these processes are within our organization. We can just let the AI know what the outcome is and let it figure out how to best navigate the chaos of our organization. So there is an interesting point there to consider, being more focused on the outcomes and the drivers behind it. But there's, I think, a lot more at play, and it sort of oversimplifies it. So between optional and important.
But this is his angle, right? He tries to take complex issues and boil them down to a simple argument. So, and he has done a good job in this one as well. But John, you have some counter argument to his argument.
All right, I don't do this often, but this is the problem with Wharton. If he had gone to Harvard, right, business school, and got his doctorate there, he would have read a whole bunch of organizational theorists as well as political scientists in the context of administration. Anyway, the problem here is that he's set up a false dichotomy. The bitter pill is that the machines can learn faster and human wisdom is nothing, in terms of improvement. And the organizational garbage can model from Jim March and his colleagues, basically says that there's relatively random binding, and the mechanisms of action are power and status and things like that, which are not quote unquote rational. The problem with this analysis is that there is no objective function for the optimization of organizations. So you're not going to have a bitter pill problem because you always have human beings, contesting for power and economic return as well as status. So I don't agree with his framing of the problem, and I think it's a little bit verbose, and I think it doesn't really identify the reality. And we study this a lot of how organizations actually map and anneal their organizational processes and outcomes. So I think it sends people down the wrong path.
So you were thinking optional.
Yes.
Luda, I want to note that to be able to teach at Harvard Business School, you have to have a hyper competitiveness that can turn on a dime against any other business school that we're seeing. Very articulate in John this morning.
Hey, go Harvard. I wish Columbia didn't collapse. Anyway.
Okay, so we have an optional, maybe important. Tim, where did you come out on this?
Well, I was sort of on the fence. I sort of agree with John. I think, in fact, the whole thing here, I will argue to a certain extent that I could argue with him on the organizational theory stuff, because there is a lot of crap in organizations. because you have to remember that organizations are also a socialist community where people hire their friends, basically. And so there's a lot of just crazy stuff that goes on with no real purpose. But at the end of the day, you have to make a profit. So, there's a lot of threshold behavior where as long as you're above threshold and you're making profit, what's more important to you? Trying to push more profit, trying to get revenue generation, trying to build new businesses, or trying to clean up the crap in the corner over there that you really don't want to. And so that's what happens. You get this agglomeration of garbage. And that's hard to prevent. But it's not that terrible either. But the bigger lesson, which is right, I think, is that, to me, this is just an analogy for Mike Hammer's original thesis that, process mapping is not really what you want to do. Outcome driving is what you want to do. So don't worry about the crap in the corner and that stuff over there. Worry about what you're trying to produce and where you're trying to go, and focus on that. And even in process redesign, that, I was there when Mike Hammer wrote the Reengineering the Business, and I worked in companies where and everybody lost that part of the lesson, which is no, the point of mapping your current process. In fact, we didn't even map current processes most of the time. The point was to avoid mapping current processes, but to take a look at information technology, because he was a database guy, and say, if we just rethought the whole process based on technology, how would we actually do it? And that's where we should start. We should never start with the current state. So there's a good analogy there, but I'm sort of in John's camp here at the end of the day. This is a long, you could say that in a paragraph rather than a couple of pages.
Yeah, but and he makes a good point and argues so that we are arguing here, but it sounds like optional. Okay, optional, so Paul, optional, Ankaj?
Optional, Luda.
Okay.
Optional for me, a great theoretical discussion for all those academics at Wharton and Harvard, but we support AI leaders are doing real work.
All right, last one, Ankaj, please.
Okay, the last one that we have for today comes from AWS, and it's a case study about how Performline uses prompt engineering on Amazon Bedrock to detect compliance violations.
Yes, Ankaj, if you could review this for us briefly.
Sure, Luda. Sure, Luda. So what they are doing here is, so they are using prompt engineering on Amazon Bedrock to automate compliance checks, especially for marketing content. So their system, it parses through millions of pages using tailored prompts and also templates to flag violation for their contextual insights. I was important on this, so it provides us a good overview in terms of how they did it, what benefits they were able to get out of this. So a good AWS case study, I would say.
So you would rate it important? Yes. Okay. Adam, what's your thinking?
Yeah, I think important as well. It does get into the details, and there's so many ways I think you could apply this other places where you need effectively that auditor. You need something that's checking and maintaining compliance, and people are going to want to have sort of almost this independent grounding going on. So it's a very powerful use case. I would almost go to essential. I was looking into some of the specifics that they describe in terms of the prompt engineering strategies that they use. And it's some pretty important and powerful stuff around, like, not hard coding prompts into the code itself, and deploying those prompts and using versioning and managing the prompts centrally. So there's some really good thought leadership in here around it. Obviously, that they learned through the hard yards of building this pretty strict compliance tool.
Yeah, and they optimized for performance because you have to do it rather quickly, latency and the like. So it and not, 15% reduction in labor and 50% from not visiting the pages that didn't change. So some shortcuts here, but an impressive case. Adam is suggesting we rate important. Tim, important?
I agree.
Okay.
They give some, at least some, inference about the improvement in productivity. It's good and detailed. It gives a lot of what we might call design patterns that would be helpful to people of ways to structure their architecture, even if you don't use these particular tools. So yeah,
Okay.
important.
Paul, okay with important?
Yep.
John, anything to add to important?
Nope.
Okay, so
I'll tell you one thing I will exhort to the small number of people here, and maybe get back to Amazon, is evaluation, because particularly in compliance, the real question if they didn't cite was how many errors do we have? Because in compliance, that's a real problem. And they never talk about that stuff. So this is really good in the basic throughput. I just wish people would pay more attention, because this is a big issue for the whole field, is how much can we trust these probabilistic robots?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so Ankaj, if you could please show us the scorecard. In the meantime, Paul, any announcements?
Yeah, announcement. We just posted online the recording from our learning lab last night. Sarah Rich from Car Gurus had a fabulous presentation discussion on how they rolled out their AI Forward program of 20 employees from cross-functional team, really driving to a AI culture with full support of the CEO and management team. So really, really good discussion on a topic that many more companies are taking very seriously. So you can find that on GAI Insights YouTube.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Now, okay, so we have for today, we have 4 importance and 2 optionals. Thank you all for being here and commenting. We really appreciate it.
Luda, can I just say one thing?
Please, John.
In the comments, I put in a link to the paper I was talking about. So if you want to start to delve into the legitimacy of value extraction as we automate cognition, that's a really good paper to start with.
I don't see it. I should check out page
4. It says,
right, above, yeah.
Those interested in the theoretical discussion. Right.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube, the YouTube comments.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, listeners, and for commenting and agreeing, disagreeing with us. Really appreciate it.
And see many of you at the conference in 2 months, GAI World.
Exactly. Buy some tickets. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Luda. Bye now. Good to see you in person, Akash, or in face anyway.
Right.
Bye-bye.